you ever felt like you were cursed with a heart that feels everything too deeply? Like the world's emotions wash over you in waves, so powerful they sometimes threaten to pull you under. That sensitivity you carry isn't just about being easily hurt or quick to tears. It's about experiencing life in high definition when everyone else seems to be watching in standard. It's about noticing the subtle shifts in someone's expression that others miss, feeling the weight of injustice even when it doesn't directly affect you, and sometimes drowning in the depth of your own emotions without knowing how to come up for air. I understand this feeling intimately, this double-edged gift of profound sensitivity. It can feel like living in a world that wasn't built for hearts like ours, a world that often seems to reward emotional armor rather than authentic vulnerability. Many of us learn to hide these depths, to create a safer, more acceptable version of ourselves that doesn't feel quite so much. We build elaborate labyrinths of protection around our true nature, showing only what we believe others can handle or what will earn their approval. The pain of this disconnection from our authentic selves is profound, a quiet suffering that echoes through our daily interactions, our relationships, and our sense of purpose. Yet what if I told you that this sensitivity, this depth of feeling that sometimes feels like a curse, might actually be your greatest gift? What if the path forward isn't about learning to feel less, but about understanding how to navigate the depths of your emotional world with greater wisdom and compassion? Today, we're going to explore a perspective on emotional sensitivity through the lens of Carl Rogers' humanistic psychology, a framework that honors the depth of human experience and offers a compassionate approach to embracing our authentic selves. This isn't about quick fixes or simplistic solutions, but about a profound shift in how we understand and relate to our emotional nature. It's about discovering that what you may have seen as a weakness might actually be your greatest source of wisdom, connection, and meaning. Carl Rogers, one of the founders of humanistic psychology, developed an approach that fundamentally changed how we understand human potential and emotional growth. At the heart of his person-centered approach is a radical proposition that each of us has an innate drive toward growth, healing, and fulfillment. Rogers called this the actualizing tendency, an inherent movement toward becoming more fully ourselves when given the right conditions. This perspective stands in stark contrast to approaches that view human nature as fundamentally flawed or in need of rigid control. Instead, Rogers saw our authentic nature as inherently positive, creative, and social. The challenge isn't that we're broken, it's that we've lost connection with our true selves along the way. This disconnection often begins in childhood, where we learn that certain feelings, thoughts, or aspects of ourselves are unacceptable or unsafe to express. Perhaps you were told you were too sensitive, or that you needed to toughen up. Maybe your intense emotions were met with dismissal, punishment, or uncomfortable silence. Over time, these experiences teach us to create what Rogers called conditions of worth, internal rules about which parts of ourselves deserve love and which must remain hidden. We begin to construct what he called the ideal self, an image of who we believe we should be to earn acceptance and love, often at odds with our real self, the authentic expression of who we actually are. For those who feel everything deeply, this split can be particularly painful. You may have learned to hide your tears, to swallow your outrage at injustice, to temper your enthusiasm, or to keep your profound observations to yourself. You may have become skilled at presenting a more acceptable version of yourself to the world, one that doesn't rock the boat or make others uncomfortable with the intensity of your emotional landscape. Yet according to Rogers, this movement away from our authentic selves is the root of much psychological distress. When we live primarily from our constructed ideal self, rather than our real self, we experience what he called incongruence, a painful state of internal division and disconnection. The path toward healing, then, isn't about learning sophisticated techniques to manage or suppress your sensitivity. It's about creating the conditions that allow you to reclaim and integrate your authentic emotional nature into your life. I want to make a pause here for a moment. As we've been discussing this experience of feeling everything deeply, I wonder how this resonates with your own journey. Have you felt the need to hide parts of yourself that feel too much, too deeply, or too intensely? I know how challenging it can be to put words to these profound inner experiences. Sometimes naming what we feel is the first step toward transforming our relationship with it. I'd like to invite you to share in the comments below. Perhaps starting with, "I feel disconnected when ... double quotes, and completing it with whatever comes genuinely to your heart. Your words might be simple or complex. What matters is that they're honest. By sharing your experience, you not only take a step toward your own healing, but you also create a ripple of permission for others who may be silently carrying similar feelings. Your vulnerability might be exactly what someone else needs to feel less alone in their own emotional depth. And now, continuing our exploration of Roger's approach, let's look at the 3 core conditions he identified as essential for psychological growth and healing. The first is what Rogers called unconditional positive regard, a form of acceptance that doesn't depend on behavior, achievement, or conformity to expectations. It's about being valued for your intrinsic worth as a human being, not for what you do or how well you meet external standards. For the deeply feeling person, experiencing unconditional positive regard means being accepted even when your emotions seem too much for others. It means being valued not despite your sensitivity, but inclusive of it, as an integral part of who you are. The second condition is empathic understanding, which involves entering the private world of another person and moving around in it without judgment. It's about truly seeing from another's perspective, sensing meanings they might only be dimly aware of, and communicating this understanding. For someone who feels deeply, being met with empathic understanding is a profound relief. It's the experience of having someone truly see your emotional landscape without trying to change it, minimize it, or rush you through it. The third condition is congruence or genuineness, which refers to the therapist's or relationship partner's authenticity and honesty. When someone relates to you with congruence, there's an alignment between what they're experiencing internally and what they're expressing externally. There's no facade, no hidden agenda, no manipulation. These 3 conditions work together to create what Rogers called a growth-promoting climate, an environment in which people naturally move toward greater self-awareness, self-acceptance, and psychological freedom. When we experience these conditions, either in therapy or in our close relationships, we begin to lower our defenses and reconnect with parts of ourselves we've kept hidden. For those who feel everything deeply, these conditions offer a pathway to reclaiming your sensitivity as a strength, rather than managing it as a liability. Rather than learning to feel less, you learn to feel fully, with greater awareness and self-compassion. What makes Rogers' approach so powerful for sensitive people is that it doesn't pathologize emotional depth. Unlike approaches that might frame sensitivity as a disorder to be treated or a weakness to be overcome, person-centered therapy honors the wisdom and value in your emotional responsiveness. It recognizes that your capacity to feel deeply gives you access to important information about yourself and the world around you. Your sensitivity allows you to notice subtle shifts in your environment, to detect unspoken dynamics in relationships, and to connect with others at a profound level. These are gifts, not flaws to be corrected. The goal isn't to become less sensitive, but to develop a more compassionate and skillful relationship with your sensitivity. This shifts the focus from trying to change your fundamental nature to learning how to navigate your rich, emotional landscape more effectively. Rogers' concept of the fully functioning person offers a vision of what this might look like. A fully functioning person, according to Rogers, lives with an increasing openness to experience. Rather than defensively shutting down certain feelings or perceptions, they move toward greater acceptance of all aspects of their experience. For the sensitive person, this means gradually becoming more willing to acknowledge and stay present with intense emotions, rather than immediately trying to escape or suppress them. The fully functioning person also lives more fully in each moment, with greater presence and awareness of what's happening now rather than being caught in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. They trust their own experiencing, their internal sense of what feels right or wrong for them, rather than relying primarily on external authorities or rigid rules. And they live with greater creativity and adaptability, viewing life as an ongoing process of growth rather than a problem to be solved once and for all. What's particularly liberating about Rogers' vision is that it's not about reaching a fixed endpoint of perfect mental health or happiness. It's about engaging in an ongoing process of becoming more fully yourself, with all the complexity that entails. For those who feel deeply, this process involves learning to trust the wisdom of your emotions rather than seeing them as obstacles to overcome. It means developing a more nuanced understanding of what your feelings are telling you and how to respond to them in ways that honor both yourself and others. One of the most powerful aspects of Rogers' approach is his recognition of the wisdom of our bodies and emotions. He understood that our feelings aren't arbitrary or meaningless. They contain important information about our needs, boundaries, and values. For the person who feels everything deeply, learning to listen to this embodied wisdom can be transformative. When you feel a wave of sadness, anger, or joy moving through you, there's intelligence in that experience. Your emotions are telling you something important about what matters to you, what you need, or how a situation is affecting you. Learning to listen to these messages with curiosity rather than judgment opens up new possibilities for self-understanding and authentic action. This doesn't mean that every emotion should be acted upon impulsively. Part of developing emotional wisdom is learning to create space between feeling and action, to reflect on what your emotions are telling you before deciding how to respond. But it does mean taking your emotional responses seriously as valuable sources of information rather than dismissing them as irrational or problematic. Another important aspect of Roger's work is his understanding of the relationship between self-acceptance and change. Paradoxically, he found that when people accept themselves as they are, including the parts they want to change, they create the conditions that make authentic change possible. As Rogers famously put it, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. For the deeply feeling person, this means that accepting your sensitivity, with all its challenges and gifts, is actually the foundation for learning to navigate it more skillfully. When you stop fighting against your emotional nature and instead embrace it as a fundamental part of who you are, you create the inner safety that allows for growth and transformation. This perspective shifts the entire orientation of personal development. Instead of approaching growth as a battle against your flawed nature, you approach it as a process of becoming more fully who you already are, beneath the layers of protection and adaptation. Your sensitivity isn't something to overcome. It's a core aspect of your authentic self that's seeking expression and integration. In practical terms, what might this process of embracing your emotional depth look like? First, it involves developing greater awareness of your emotional experiences as they arise. This means learning to notice the physical sensations, thoughts, and action tendencies that accompany different emotions. Where do you feel anger in your body? What thoughts typically accompany feelings of sadness or joy? What are you moved to do when you feel afraid or inspired? This kind of emotional literacy helps you recognize and name your feelings more accurately, creating a foundation for responding to them wisely. Second, it involves cultivating self-compassion for the full range of your emotional experiences. This means meeting your feelings, even the difficult ones, with kindness and understanding rather than criticism or rejection. It's about acknowledging that it's human to feel afraid, angry, sad, or overwhelmed at times, and that needing support with intense emotions doesn't make you weak or broken. When you respond to your own suffering with the same care you would offer a dear friend, you create an internal environment of safety that helps regulate your nervous system and enables more thoughtful responses. Third, it involves developing practices that help you stay present with intense emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. This might include mindfulness techniques that help you observe your feelings with some spaciousness rather than being completely identified with them. It might involve physical practices like deep breathing, movement, or time in nature that help regulate your nervous system when emotions are intense. And it might include creative expression through writing, art, music, or other forms that give your emotions constructive channels for expression and integration. Fourth, it involves learning to communicate your emotional truth in ways that honor both yourself and others. This doesn't mean emotionally dumping on those around you or expecting others to fix your feelings. It means developing the skill to express what you're experiencing clearly and directly, without blame or judgment, and to make requests that reflect your genuine needs and boundaries. It also means recognizing that others may not always be able to meet you in the depth of your feelings, and developing discernment about when, how, and with whom to share different aspects of your emotional experience. Finally, it involves building a life that honors and makes use of your emotional sensitivity rather than trying to work around it. This might mean choosing work that allows your empathy and perceptiveness to be assets rather than liabilities. It might involve creating relationships with people who appreciate your emotional depth rather than finding it threatening or excessive. And it might include contributing to causes that matter deeply to you, channeling your capacity for feeling into meaningful action in the world. Throughout this process, Roger's core conditions remain essential, both in your relationship with yourself and in your connections with others. Practicing unconditional positive regard toward yourself means accepting all your feelings as valid aspects of your experience, even when they're uncomfortable or inconvenient. It means recognizing that your worth isn't dependent on being emotionally together all the time, or on meeting some external standard of appropriate feeling. Practicing empathic understanding toward yourself involves listening to your emotions with curiosity and openness, seeking to understand what they're telling you rather than immediately trying to change or silence them. And practicing congruence means allowing your outer expression to reflect your inner experience more authentically, reducing the gap between your public self and your private reality. As you integrate these practices into your life, you may find that what once felt like a curse gradually reveals itself as a blessing. Your sensitivity doesn't disappear, but your relationship with it transforms. What once felt like drowning begins to feel more like swimming. With greater confidence in your ability to navigate the depths of your emotional experience, you become more capable of using your sensitivity as a source of wisdom, connection, and creative expression rather than experiencing it primarily as a source of pain or alienation. Rogers believed deeply in the human capacity for growth and healing given the right conditions. His work offers hope that even the most painful aspects of our experience can be transformed when met with acceptance, understanding, and authenticity. For the person who feels everything deeply, this means that your sensitivity need not be a life sentence of suffering or a burden to be managed. It can become one of your greatest assets, a doorway to a richer, more authentic, and more meaningful life. If this message has touched something within you today, know that you're not alone in your experience of emotional depth. Many of us walk through the world feeling more than seems bearable at times, questioning whether there's something wrong with us for being so affected by life's joys and sorrows. I want you to know that your sensitivity isn't a flaw in your design. It's a feature, not a bug. It's part of what makes you uniquely equipped to offer certain gifts to the world that others cannot. I'm here as a fellow traveler on this path, not as someone who has it all figured out. This channel is a space where we can explore together the challenges and gifts of living authentically in a world that often seems to value performance over presence and achievement over authenticity. Through the lens of Carl Rogers' person-centered approach, we'll continue to discover practical ways to embrace our true nature and create lives that honor the depth of our human experience. If you'd like to join me in this exploration, please consider subscribing to this channel. By hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications, you're not just supporting this content, you're making a commitment to your own emotional well-being and growth. You're choosing to prioritize your journey toward greater self-understanding and authentic living. I'll be here consistently, offering perspectives that honor your unique experience rather than trying to fit you into a standardized mold. Together, we can create a community of individuals who are committed to living from their real selves rather than their constructed ideals, who are learning to trust their inner wisdom rather than constantly looking outside themselves for direction and validation. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Whether you've been nodding in recognition throughout this video or just beginning to consider these ideas, I honor your willingness to explore what it means to live authentically with all the sensitivity you carry. Let's continue this journey together, supporting each other as we learn to transform what once felt like a curse into one of our greatest blessings. Our emotional depth is not something to be cured or overcome. It's a wellspring of wisdom waiting to be honored and integrated into lives of meaning, purpose, and genuine connection. One of the most profound insights from Rogers' work is his understanding of the relationship between self-acceptance and authentic connection with others. When we're caught in patterns of denying or hiding aspects of our emotional experience, we create barriers not only within ourselves, but also between ourselves and others. As Rogers observed, what is most personal is most universal. The very feelings we're afraid to reveal because they seem too intense, too vulnerable, or too different from what others experience are often the ones that, when expressed authentically, create the deepest bonds of human understanding. For the person who feels everything deeply, this insight offers a powerful reframing of what your sensitivity might mean for your relationships. The depth of your emotional experience, rather than being an obstacle to connection, can become a gateway to more authentic and meaningful relationships when shared appropriately and received with understanding. This doesn't mean wearing your heart on your sleeve at all times or sharing your emotional reality indiscriminately. Discernment about when, how, and with whom to share different aspects of your inner world remains important. but it does mean recognizing that your capacity for deep feeling gives you a unique ability to understand and resonate with others' emotional experiences, creating possibilities for connection that might not otherwise exist. Roger's concept of empathy is particularly relevant here. He described empathy not as a technique, but as a way of being with another person that involves temporarily setting aside your own perspective to enter fully into theirs. It's about sensing the personal meanings they're experiencing, even those they might only be dimly aware of themselves, and communicating your understanding in a way that helps them feel truly seen and valued. For the sensitive person, this kind of empathic presence often comes naturally. Your responsiveness to subtle emotional cues and your ability to resonate deeply with others' feelings are profound gifts that can create spaces of healing and connection. However, effective empathy also requires maintaining awareness of the boundary between your emotions and those of others. Without this boundary consciousness, sensitive people can easily become overwhelmed by others' emotional states or lose touch with their own needs and feelings in relationships. Developing this kind of boundaried empathy is an ongoing practice that involves both deepening your connection with your own emotional center and cultivating the ability to be fully present with others without becoming engulfed by their experience. Another important aspect of Roger's approach is his understanding of the relationship between emotional authenticity and creativity. When we're connected to the full range of our feelings and trusting of our inner experience, we have access to a wellspring of creative energy and insight. Our emotions inform our values, our sense of meaning, and our capacity to envision possibilities beyond what currently exists. For the person who feels deeply, embracing your emotional nature can unlock creative potential in all areas of life. From artistic expression to problem solving to reimagining relationships and social structures, this creative potential isn't limited to traditionally artistic domains. It extends to the very art of living itself, to the creation of a life that reflects your unique values, sensibilities, and ways of experiencing the world. When you allow your emotional wisdom to guide your choices rather than primarily conforming to external expectations, you begin to shape a life that feels more authentically aligned with who you are. You might make unconventional choices about work, relationships, living situations, or how you spend your time, guided by a deep trust in what feels genuinely right and life-giving for you, rather than what looks successful or appropriate from the outside. This kind of authentic living requires courage, especially in a culture that often rewards conformity and performance over authenticity and presence. It means being willing to disappoint others' expectations at times, to make choices that may not be readily understood by those around you, and to tolerate the uncertainty that comes with following your own path rather than a clearly mapped route. Yet, as Rogers observed in his work with clients, this movement toward greater authenticity, though challenging, ultimately leads to a sense of aliveness and meaning that can't be achieved through compliance with external standards alone. For the sensitive person, embracing your emotional nature also involves developing a more nuanced understanding of the relationship between vulnerability and strength. In a culture that often equates strength with stoicism or emotional control, your sensitivity might appear as weakness. Yet Rogers' work suggests a very different perspective, that true strength lies not in the absence of vulnerability, but in the courage to remain open and present with the full range of human experience, including its painful and challenging aspects. This kind of courageous vulnerability isn't about indiscriminate emotional expression or lack of boundaries. It's about a willingness to acknowledge and honor your feelings rather than defending against them, to stay present with discomfort rather than immediately seeking escape, and to connect authentically with others from a place of emotional honesty rather than protective pretense. It's a strength that comes not from hardening yourself against life, but from developing the resilience to remain soft and responsive in a world that can be harsh and demanding. Rogers' concept of the fully functioning person speaks to this kind of resilient openness. He describes such individuals as demonstrating an increasing openness to experience, a willingness to engage with life as it is rather than as they wish it would be. They trust their immediate experiencing, listening to the wisdom of their bodies and emotions rather than primarily to external authorities or rigid rules. And they live with greater presence in each moment, neither dwelling excessively in the past nor anxiously anticipating the future. For the person who feels everything deeply, moving toward this kind of fully functioning involves not diminishing your emotional responsiveness, but developing a more accepting and skillful relationship with it. It means learning to stay present with intense emotions without being overwhelmed by them, to trust your emotional wisdom without being ruled by every feeling that arises, and to use your sensitivity as a guide for meaningful action rather than experiencing it primarily as a source of suffering or limitation. In practical terms, this might involve developing practices that help you remain grounded and centered even when emotions are intense. Mindfulness approaches can be particularly helpful, offering tools for observing your feelings with spaciousness and acceptance, rather than immediately reacting to or trying to change them. Physical practices like conscious breathing, movement, or time in nature can help regulate your nervous system when emotions threaten to become overwhelming. And creative expression through writing, art, music, or other forms can provide channels for processing and integrating intense emotional experiences. It also involves developing greater emotional literacy, the ability to recognize and name the nuances of your emotional experience with accuracy and subtlety. Many of us, especially those who are taught to suppress or ignore our feelings, have limited emotional vocabularies. We might recognize only broad categories like good or bad, comfortable or uncomfortable, missing the rich information contained in more specific emotions like disappointment, anticipation, contentment, or awe. Expanding your emotional vocabulary helps you make finer distinctions in your experience, creating more options for how you understand and respond to different feelings. Another important aspect of embracing your sensitivity involves developing greater discernment about the sources of your emotional reactions. Sometimes our intense feelings are offering important information about a present situation that requires attention or action. Other times, they're being triggered by past experiences or internal narratives that may not accurately reflect current reality. Learning to distinguish between these different sources of emotional response isn't about invalidating any of your feelings, but about developing a more nuanced understanding of what they're telling you and how to respond most effectively. Rogers' approach emphasizes the importance of self-trust in this process of discernment. Rather than relying primarily on external authorities to tell you what your feelings mean or how you should respond to them, you develop an increasing capacity to listen to and trust your own experiencing. This doesn't mean ignoring external information or perspective, but it does mean giving significant weight to your own felt sense of situations and relationships as you navigate your way forward. This kind of self-trust develops gradually, often through experiences of being heard and validated by others who can offer the conditions of empathy, unconditional positive regard, and congruence, whether in therapy, close relationships, or supportive communities. These experiences of being truly seen and accepted help dissolve the conditions of worth that lead us to doubt or dismiss our authentic responses. As we internalize these accepting relationships, we become more capable of offering the same quality of presence to ourselves, creating an inner environment that supports continued growth and self-discovery. If this message resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in this description of someone who feels life deeply and longs to honor that sensitivity rather than hide or diminish it, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here we'll continue exploring perspectives from humanistic psychology and other wisdom traditions that honor the depth and complexity of human experience. We'll look at practical approaches to living authentically in a world that often seems designed for people with thicker emotional skin. And we'll create a community of individuals committed to embracing their true nature rather than conforming to limiting expectations. By hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications, you're not making a casual choice. You're making a commitment to your own growth and well-being. You're saying yes to a journey of self-discovery and authentic living, one that honors the wisdom of your emotional nature rather than seeing it as a problem to be solved. And you're joining a community of fellow travelers who understand the challenges and gifts of emotional sensitivity, who are learning together how to transform what once felt like a curse into a source of deep meaning and connection. Thank you for being here today, for allowing these ideas to touch your heart and perhaps spark new possibilities in how you understand and relate to your own emotional depth. Whether you're just beginning to explore these concepts or have been on this path for some time, I honor your courage in showing up authentically and your willingness to grow. Remember that your sensitivity isn't a flaw to be corrected, but a gift to be embraced, one that offers unique possibilities for wisdom, creativity, and meaningful connection in a world that desperately needs these qualities. I look forward to continuing this journey with you, supporting each other as we learn to live more fully from our real selves, rather than our constructed ideals, trusting in the wisdom of our authentic nature to guide us toward lives of greater meaning, purpose, and joy. Roger's work also offers valuable insights into how our emotional sensitivity can inform our approach to conflict and disagreement in relationships. In traditional models of conflict resolution, the goal is often to defend one's position and persuade others of its correctness. This approach tends to create winners and losers, with both parties becoming increasingly entrenched in their positions as the conflict escalates. However, Rogers proposed a radically different approach based on empathic understanding and authentic expression. He suggested that when each person in a conflict can listen deeply to the other's perspective without immediately defending or counter-arguing, something transformative becomes possible. The conflict shifts from a battle of opposing positions to an exploration of the underlying needs, values, and concerns that each person is experiencing. For the sensitive person, this approach offers a way to engage with interpersonal differences that honors rather than suppresses your emotional responsiveness. Instead of seeing your quick attunement to tension or your strong reactions to perceived injustice as liabilities in conflict situations, you can learn to use your emotional awareness as a resource for deeper understanding and more creative resolution. Your sensitivity to subtle shifts in emotional tone can help you detect when a conversation is moving toward defensive posturing rather than authentic connection. Your capacity for empathy can help you stay genuinely curious about another's experience, even when it differs dramatically from your own. And your awareness of your own emotional responses can provide important information about what matters most to you in the situation. This doesn't mean that navigating conflict becomes easy or that differences always resolve into perfect harmony. It does mean that conflicts can become opportunities for deeper understanding and growth rather than experiences of alienation and hurt. As Rogers observed, when people feel truly heard and understood, they often naturally move toward more nuanced and flexible perspectives, creating space for solutions that honor the core concerns of all involved. Another aspect of Rogers' work that speaks directly to the experience of sensitive people is his understanding of the relationship between emotional awareness and personal freedom. Many of us grow up learning to restrict our range of emotional expression and experience based on explicit or implicit messages about what feelings are acceptable in our families, communities, or culture. These restrictions become internalized as conditions of worth that limit not only how we express ourselves, but also what we allow ourselves to feel and know. For the sensitive person, these restrictions can be particularly painful, creating a sense of being at war with your own nature. Yet Rogers' work suggests that as we develop greater acceptance of the full range of our emotional experience, we also develop greater freedom to choose how we respond to our feelings rather than being driven by them unconsciously. This is not about suppressing emotions, but about developing a more spacious and accepting relationship with them. When we can acknowledge and validate our feelings without judgment, we create an inner environment that allows emotions to flow through us rather than becoming stuck or overwhelming. We develop the capacity to feel deeply without being controlled by our feelings, to be moved by our emotions without being captured by them. This kind of emotional freedom is particularly important for sensitive people, who may otherwise find themselves either overwhelmed by intense feelings or exhausted from constantly trying to manage or suppress them. By developing a more accepting relationship with your emotional nature, you create the conditions for both greater authenticity and greater choice in how you live and relate. Rogers' person-centered approach also offers a valuable perspective on the social dimensions of emotional sensitivity. In many contexts, sensitivity is devalued or pathologized, seen as a weakness rather than a strength. Those who feel deeply may be labeled as too emotional, too intense, or too sensitive, messages that can lead to shame and self-doubt. Yet Rogers' work challenges these negative evaluations, suggesting that our cultural tendency to devalue emotional sensitivity reflects a limited understanding of human potential and well-being. From a person-centered perspective, the problem isn't with sensitivity itself, but with social environments that fail to provide the conditions necessary for sensitive individuals to thrive. When sensitive people are consistently met with dismissal, criticism, or attempts to change their fundamental nature, they naturally develop defensive strategies that limit their authentic expression and growth. However, when they experience environments characterized by empathy, acceptance, and authenticity, their sensitivity becomes a resource rather than a liability. This understanding has implications not only for personal growth, but also for how we structure our relationships, workplaces, educational systems, and other social institutions. It suggests the value of creating environments that can accommodate and even appreciate a wider range of emotional expression and sensitivity, recognizing the unique contributions that emotionally responsive individuals can make to our collective life. For the sensitive person, this perspective offers both validation of your experience and hope for creating contexts in which your sensitivity can be more fully expressed and valued, rather than seeing yourself as the problem when you struggle in environments that are overstimulating, invalidating, or lacking in emotional nuance. You can recognize the legitimate mismatch between your needs and what those environments provide. This recognition empowers you to seek out or create settings that better support your way of being, whether in your personal relationships, your choice of work, or your broader community involvement. At the same time, Roger's emphasis on empathy reminds us that sensitivity to others' experience doesn't mean absorbing their emotions as our own or taking responsibility for their feelings. True empathy involves both deep understanding of another's perspective and clarity about the boundary between self and other. For sensitive individuals, who may be particularly prone to emotional contagion or taking on others' emotional states, developing this kind of boundaried empathy is an essential aspect of self-care and healthy relating. It allows you to remain open and responsive to others without becoming depleted or losing connection with your own needs and feelings. As we've explored these various dimensions of Roger's approach and their relevance for sensitive individuals, a central theme emerges: the possibility of transforming what might initially be experienced as a burden into a source of wisdom, connection, and meaningful contribution. This transformation doesn't come through techniques aimed at changing your fundamental nature, but through creating conditions that allow your authentic self to emerge more fully. For the person who feels everything deeply, embracing rather than resisting your sensitivity opens the door to a different kind of strength, one rooted not in emotional armor, but in the courage to remain open to life in all its complexity. It creates possibilities for connections of exceptional depth and authenticity, for creative expressions that speak to the heart of human experience, and for contributions that address our shared longing for greater understanding and compassion in our collective life. This journey of embracing your sensitivity is not a linear path with a clear destination, but an ongoing process of growth and discovery. There will still be times when emotions feel overwhelming, when the world seems too harsh for your sensitive heart, or when you question whether it wouldn't be easier to somehow develop thicker skin. Yet even in these challenging moments, Roger's perspective offers a compass for finding your way forward. Return to acceptance of your experience just as it is. Seek understanding of what your feelings are telling you, and allow your authentic response to emerge. As you continue this journey, remember that you're not alone in your experience of emotional depth. Many others walk this path, learning day by day how to honor their sensitivity while navigating a world that often moves at a different emotional rhythm. In coming together, whether through communities like this one or through personal relationships that support authentic expression, we create spaces where sensitivity is recognized not as a flaw, but as an essential aspect of our humanity, one that enriches our individual and collective life in countless ways. If the ideas we've explored today resonate with your experience, I invite you once more to subscribe to this channel and join this community of individuals committed to living authentically with all the sensitivity they carry. Together, we can support each other in transforming what once felt like a curse into one of our greatest blessings, creating lives and relationships that honor the depth and richness of human emotional experience. Thank you for your presence and attention today. Whether you're just beginning to reframe your relationship with your sensitivity or have been on this journey for some time, know that your willingness to engage authentically with your experience contributes to a world of greater understanding, compassion, and emotional wisdom. The path of embracing your sensitivity may not always be easy, but it leads toward a life of exceptional richness, meaning, and authentic connection, one that honors the full depth of who you are and what you have to offer. One of the most powerful aspects of Roger's approach for sensitive individuals is his understanding of the relationship between vulnerability and growth. In many traditional approaches to personal development, vulnerability is seen primarily as a weakness to be protected or a wound to be healed. Roger's perspective, however, suggests that our willingness to be vulnerable, to allow ourselves to be seen and known in our authentic experience, is actually the gateway to our deepest growth and connection. For the person who feels everything deeply, this reframing of vulnerability can be profoundly liberating. Rather than seeing your emotional openness as something that leaves you dangerously exposed, you can recognize it as the very quality that enables the most meaningful experiences of human connection and personal transformation. This doesn't mean that discernment about when, how, and with whom to share your vulnerability isn't important. Boundaries remain essential, particularly for sensitive individuals who may be more easily overwhelmed by others' responses or lack thereof. But it does mean that your capacity for vulnerability, when engaged consciously and in appropriate contexts, is a strength rather than a liability. Rogers observed this dynamic repeatedly in his therapeutic work. When clients were able to lower their defenses and share their authentic experience, including their fears, doubts, longings, and pain, something remarkable often happened. Not only did they experience a sense of relief and greater self-acceptance, but they also created the conditions for genuine transformation. Parts of themselves that had been rigid or stuck began to flow more freely. Perspectives that had been narrow or fixed became more flexible and nuanced. And relationships that had been characterized by defensiveness or performance opened to new possibilities for authentic connection. For the sensitive person, this understanding of vulnerability as a pathway to growth offers a radical reorientation to aspects of yourself that you might have previously seen as weaknesses. Your tendency to be moved to tears by beauty or suffering, your quick empathic response to others' pain, your deep resonance with the emotional atmosphere around you. These qualities that might have seemed like burdens can be recognized as essential aspects of your capacity for growth, creativity, and meaningful connection. This doesn't mean that learning to navigate intense emotions isn't still important. Sensitive individuals often benefit from developing practices that help them stay grounded and centered when feelings are powerful. These might include mindfulness techniques, physical practices like yoga or time in nature, creative expression through various mediums, or simply the habit of taking time for quiet reflection and integration of emotional experiences. But these practices aren't about dampening or controlling your sensitivity. They're about creating the conditions that allow you to stay present with the full range of your experience without becoming overwhelmed. Another important dimension of Rogers' work for sensitive individuals is his understanding of the relationship between emotional authenticity and meaningful purpose. When we're disconnected from our genuine emotional responses or unable to trust our inner experiencing, we often struggle to discern what truly matters to us or to make choices that reflect our deepest values. We may find ourselves pursuing goals or roles that look successful from the outside but leave us feeling empty or alienated from ourselves. For the sensitive person, reconnecting with your authentic emotional responses can be a powerful compass for discovering what truly brings meaning and purpose to your life. Your strong reactions, both positive and negative, offer important information about what resonates with your core values and what violates them. Your natural empathic concern for others' well-being may guide you toward forms of contribution that address suffering or injustice in ways aligned with your unique gifts. And your capacity for being deeply moved by beauty, truth, or connection may lead you to creative expressions that speak to essential aspects of human experience. This kind of purpose, grounded in authentic emotional response rather than external expectations or abstract ideals, has a different quality than goals pursued primarily for recognition, security, or conformity to others' definitions of success. It's characterized by a sense of rightness or alignment that goes beyond logical analysis, a felt sense of yes, this is mine to do even when the path forward isn't completely clear or validated by conventional measures. For many sensitive individuals, finding this kind of meaningful purpose involves a significant shift in how they relate to their emotional nature. Rather than seeing their sensitivity primarily as a source of pain or difficulty to be managed, they begin to recognize it as a guide to what matters most deeply to them and where their unique contributions may lie. This shift doesn't mean that the challenges of being sensitive in a fast-paced, often harsh world disappear. It does mean that those challenges take on different meaning when understood in the context of a life oriented toward purposes that matter deeply to you. Rogers' approach also offers valuable insights into the relationship between emotional sensitivity and creativity. When we're connected to the full range of our feelings and trusting of our inner experience, we have access to a wellspring of creative energy and insight that can express itself in countless ways. For the sensitive person, embracing rather than restricting your emotional depth can unlock creative potential not only in traditionally artistic domains, but in all areas of life. Your capacity for nuanced emotional perception gives you access to subtle distinctions and connections that others might miss. Your empathic understanding allows you to imagine perspectives and experiences beyond your own, enriching your creative expression with greater depth and inclusivity. And your emotional responsiveness to beauty, meaning, and possibility can inspire forms of expression that touch others at a profound level. This connection between sensitivity and creativity isn't limited to the arts. Though many sensitive people do find meaningful expression through writing, music, visual arts, or other creative forms, it extends to creative problem-solving in any domain, to the creation of nurturing spaces and experiences, to the development of innovative approaches to interpersonal or social challenges, and to the very art of living itself. When you allow your sensitivity to inform how you shape your life rather than trying to fit yourself into conventional molds, you engage in a fundamental act of creativity, bringing something new into the world that reflects your unique way of seeing and experiencing. This kind of authentic creativity often has a different quality than work produced primarily to impress, compete, or conform to external standards. It has a ring of truth that comes from genuine connection with lived experience rather than clever technique or imitation of established forms. For the sensitive person, allowing your emotional depth to inform your creative expression can be both healing for yourself and meaningful for others who resonate with what you create. It becomes a way of transforming what might otherwise be overwhelming sensitivity into forms that communicate, connect, and contribute to our shared understanding of what it means to be human. As we've explored various dimensions of Roger's approach and their relevance for sensitive individuals, a question may arise: how do we balance honoring our authentic emotional nature with functioning effectively in a world that may not always accommodate or value that sensitivity? This is a legitimate concern, particularly for those whose sensitivity has led to significant struggle in work environments, relationships, or other contexts where their emotional responsiveness was seen as excessive or problematic. Roger's perspective doesn't offer simplistic answers to this complex challenge, but it does suggest some principles that can help navigate this terrain. First, it emphasizes the importance of self-acceptance as the foundation for any authentic adaptation to external realities. When we start from a place of seeing our sensitivity as fundamentally wrong or flawed, we tend to develop adaptations that further disconnect us from our authentic selves, creating more suffering in the long run. In contrast, when we can accept our sensitivity as an integral part of who we are, we can make more conscious and flexible choices about how to engage with environments or relationships that may be challenging for us. Second, Roger's approach suggests that adaptation isn't a one-way street. While we can certainly develop skills and practices that help us function more effectively in various contexts, we also have agency in choosing or creating environments that better support our way of being. This might involve seeking out work settings that value emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills, building relationships with people who appreciate depth and authenticity, or creating routines and spaces in our lives that honor our need for reflection, integration, and meaningful connection. Third, Roger's work reminds us that our sensitivity itself can be an asset in creating change in our environments, when expressed with both authenticity and skill. The same emotional responsiveness that can make certain situations challenging also gives us unique capacities for empathy, insight, and meaningful connection. As we develop greater confidence in the value of these qualities, we can often find ways to bring them into our interactions and relationships that enrich not only our own experience, but also the collective environments we're part of. Finally, Roger's person-centered approach emphasizes the ongoing nature of growth and adaptation. There's no perfect endpoint where all challenges are resolved once and for all. No final state of perfect balance between honoring our sensitivity and engaging effectively with the world. Instead, there's an ongoing process of learning, adjusting, and evolving in response to our experiences, guided by an increasing trust in our inner wisdom and a growing capacity for both authentic self-expression and skillful engagement with the realities around us. For the sensitive person, this perspective offers both validation of your experience and hope for creating a life that honors your emotional nature, while allowing you to contribute and connect in meaningful ways. It suggests that you don't have to choose between authenticity and effectiveness, between honoring your sensitivity and engaging with the world. With time, patience, and the right supportive conditions, you can develop ways of being that integrate these seemingly opposing needs into a more whole and flexible approach to life. Throughout this exploration, we've touched on various dimensions of what it means to embrace rather than resist your emotional sensitivity. Drawing on insights from Roger's person-centered approach, we've looked at the importance of self-acceptance, the value of authentic expression, the relationship between vulnerability and growth, the role of sensitivity in discovering meaningful purpose, and the connection between emotional depth and creativity. We've considered how to navigate the challenges of being a sensitive person in a world that may not always support or value this way of being. And we've explored practices that can help transform what might initially feel like a curse into one of your greatest gifts. As we bring this discussion to a close, I want to emphasize once more that the path we've been describing isn't about reaching a state of perfect emotional harmony or eliminating all struggles related to your sensitivity. It's about developing a more compassionate and skillful relationship with your emotional nature, one that allows you to experience the richness and depth of life without being overwhelmed by it. It's about recognizing the wisdom in your sensitivity even as you learn to navigate its challenges. And it's about creating a life that honors who you truly are rather than who you think you should be to fit in or succeed by conventional standards. If this message resonates with your experience, if you recognize yourself in this description of someone who feels life deeply and longs to honor that sensitivity rather than hide or diminish it, I invite you once more to join this community by subscribing to the channel. Here we'll continue exploring perspectives and practices that support authentic living for sensitive individuals, creating together a space where emotional depth is recognized as a gift rather than a liability. By hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications, you're making a commitment to your own growth and well-being, to a path of greater self-understanding and authentic expression. You're joining a community of fellow travelers who understand both the challenges and the gifts of emotional sensitivity, who are learning together how to live from their real selves rather than their constructed ideals. Thank you for your presence and attention today. Whether you're just beginning to reframe your relationship with your sensitivity or have been on this journey for some time, know that your willingness to engage authentically with your experience contributes to a world of greater understanding, compassion, and emotional wisdom. The path of embracing your sensitivity may have its difficulties, but it leads toward a life of exceptional richness, meaning, and authentic connection, one that honors the full depth of who you are and what you have to offer. In closing, I want to share a perspective on sensitivity that I've found particularly meaningful in my own journey. Our capacity to feel deeply, to be moved by beauty and pain, to resonate with others' experiences as if they were our own. These aren't random quirks of temperament or inconvenient glitches in our emotional wiring. They're aspects of our humanity that connect us to what matters most deeply in life, to the experiences of wonder, love, meaning, and connection that make our journey worthwhile. In a world that often seems to value speed over depth, efficiency over authenticity, and certainty over openness, your sensitivity may indeed feel at times like a curse. Yet it's also your birthright, your unique window into the richness of human experience, your particular way of knowing what's true and meaningful in a world of endless noise and distraction. As you continue to explore what it means to live authentically with all the sensitivity you carry, may you find both the inner resources and the outer support that help you transform what once felt like a burden into one of your greatest blessings. And may your journey contribute to a world where sensitivity is increasingly recognized, not as a weakness to be overcome, but as an essential aspect of our shared humanity, one that enriches our collective life in countless ways. Until we meet again in our next exploration, I wish you courage in your vulnerability, wisdom in your sensitivity, and deep joy in the authentic connections your emotional nature makes possible. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and growth. I look forward to continuing our exploration together, supporting each other as we learn to embrace the full depth of who we are and what we have to offer to a world in need of precisely the gifts that sensitive hearts like yours bring. As we continue this journey of understanding and embracing emotional sensitivity through the lens of Carl Rogers' humanistic psychology, Remember that this path is not about perfection but about presence. Not about having all the answers, but about staying open to the questions that matter most. It's about developing a relationship with your sensitivity that allows it to inform and enrich your life rather than overwhelm or limit it. It's about recognizing that your emotional depth is not an accident or a mistake, but an essential aspect of your unique way of experiencing and contributing to the world. In the moments when your sensitivity feels most challenging, when you find yourself overwhelmed by the intensity of your feelings or exhausted from navigating a world that often moves at a different emotional rhythm, return to the core principles we've explored today. Practice self-acceptance, embracing your feelings with compassion rather than judgment. Seek understanding of what your emotions are telling you, listening for the wisdom in your experience rather than immediately trying to change or suppress it. Allow your authentic response to emerge, trusting that there is value in your unique way of seeing and feeling, even when it differs from those around you. And remember that you're not alone in this experience. Many others walk a similar path, learning day by day how to honor their emotional nature while creating lives of meaning and contribution. In coming together, whether through communities like this one or through personal relationships that support authentic expression, we create spaces where sensitivity is recognized, not as a burden to be managed, but as a gift to be embraced, one that enriches our individual and collective life in countless ways. Thank you once more for your presence and attention. Until we meet again, may you find both strength and tenderness in your sensitivity, wisdom in your vulnerability, and deep joy in the authentic connections your emotional depth makes possible. The journey continues, and it is my privilege to walk it alongside you. In the spirit of Carl Rogers, I encourage you to trust your own inner wisdom as you navigate the rich emotional landscape that defines your experience. Your sensitivity isn't simply something to be managed or tolerated. It's the very lens through which you perceive the world's beauty, complexity, and meaning. By honoring this aspect of yourself, you open pathways to deeper understanding, more authentic relationships, and a life aligned with what truly matters to you. As Rogers himself might say, the most personal parts of our experience are often the most universal. Your willingness to embrace and express your authentic emotional nature not only transforms your own life but creates possibilities for others to do the same. Together, we create a world where sensitivity is valued as an essential dimension of our shared humanity.